Hello, you're watching the Smoking Hot Coffee Show. My name is Amol Patel. I'm in Los Angeles. Monday through Friday, we talk to startup founders. I'm joined with...
Hey guys, I'm Jeff Pelton down here in San Diego.
And today we have another really great interview with a company that's exploding. Last 3 years, it's just been crazy. They're in the Inc.500 top 10. Adroll.com. Today we got to talk with Adam Berke. He's one of the three co-founders of Adroll. They started back in 2007. And Jeff, in this great interview, he talked about how they started. They're in the storage room behind another startup, and now they're 170 employees. Jeff, tell us more about Adroll.
Yeah, just another overnight success, right?
Yeah.
No, it was really great. I love to hear stories like these where they really had a great vision early on and kind of stuck to that focus and didn't let the influences outside negatively infect them. They said that they flourished during the down economy when all the banks were having trouble.
The Lehman Brothers, all that whole thing, the doom and gloom in 2008 was actually a good thing for these guys.
Mm-hmm. The constraint actually helped them, right?
Yeah.
And helped sort of focus, I think. And from now to today, they're, he said, expanding, I think, into Brazil and to
Europe,
in Ireland. Yeah.
Yep, and Ireland, yep. And so, really briefly, Adroll allows a publisher, an e-commerce person, a B2B company, basically display ads that follow a person around. It's that same ad that you saw, or that when you went to the person's site, you weren't ready to buy, you weren't ready to fill out for the white paper, you weren't ready to do some action, but now they following you around over the internet. And after time, you build this sort of trust with this person because you've seen them over and over again, and then eventually you'll go back and maybe possibly buy those pair of pants or download that white paper or fill out that form.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Or another great, example is you actually put the pair of pants in your shopping cart and then you never purchase it. They can use that intelligence to really target the fact that you might be still thinking about buying those a couple days down the road, while you're surfing another site or you're on Facebook or somewhere else.
Yeah, and so Adam talked about his history, how they got started. He was in the ad tech space. He had a couple of drinking buddies or some really smart guys that he ended up co-founding the company with. He talked about the recession, how that helped really focus them. He talked about how I'm building a really great product, taking a year or two just to build a product and working really close with the early customers to really figure out what are the key things that they're looking for, how they can really make a difference before they really made a big splash.
Yeah, taking time at the soft launch to figure it out, I think, is critical.
Yeah, that's very, very important. It's right now in the Bay Area, startups are all the rage. In fact, startups are really going through renaissance now, and he talks about some of the pitfalls and some of the things we should be looking out for. There is no overnight success. Be ready to hunker down for 6 years.
Yep. Love to hear it. I think it's a refreshing, breath of air to see that sort of strategy.
Yeah. So if you're looking to, do $1 billion play in a year or 5 months or whatever, that's not going to happen. You're going to need to really work hard. And obviously, advertising on the internet is a big cash cow. That he talked about Google and in many ways they kind of dropped the ball back in 2000, mid 2000, and they brought this technology out and they democratized it, and that's how they were able to grow. And he talked a little about the new things going on with Facebook Exchange. Jeff, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that covers a lot of what we talked about. It was another great interview. For sure. All the startups should go check out adroll.com, and you can try the free trial. So there's a way for you to get your feet wet, which we love.
Yeah, absolutely. Retargeting could definitely be useful if you're a startup. Definitely look into that. I think don't write it off. There's some really amazing technology there, and the ROI is there.
Yeah, I loved what when he was talking about the intent of your customer, your website visitors is really the most valuable thing you have. So I think this is a great way to really capitalize on that.
Yeah. So if you guys are remotely interested in advertising and internet advertising, the ad tech space, technology, and learning from a founder that is exploding, that's number one advertising company based in the Inc.500, this is definitely one to watch. And we're doing this Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to try to get more guests like this guy. If you like it, please subscribe to our YouTube and iTunes. Jeff?
Yeah, please subscribe. You can also email us info@smokinghotcoffee.com if you guys have any suggestions, people that you want us to have on the show,
Mhm.
or topics that you want us to cover. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, and so with that, let's cut to the interview. So here we are, 2007. Where were you? Where did you leave? How'd you find your co-founders? Talk to us about the very beginning.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah. So the very beginning. So my background, I was at another ad tech company. It was called Optimus.
Okay.
It was one of the first CPL ad networks. We started that in around 2002 or three. It was kind
For
of
those that
a
don't know, CPL is cost per lead.
cost per lead, right? So it was focusing on. It was actually a pivot from a large kind of failed .com company that was a destination website for coupons.
Oh wow. Okay.
Ironically, because that's become a very popular
I
model
know.
in recent years.
Yeah.
Um, but at the time, the economics of driving traffic to the site didn't have the performance characteristics on the other end to make the model work in terms of getting redemption value of the coupons. And it wasn't in all fairness, it wasn't the Groupon model. It was more along the lines of get 10% off your next Dell purchase by joining the email list, and that turns into that's a coupon for the consumer, a lead for Dell, and they would pay us as the website. But as I was saying, the cost of driving traffic to that site didn't work economically, so we relaunched the company as this ad network model, which we changed the name also to be called Optimus.
Okay.
And the model switched to placing those coupons basically on other publisher websites who already had a lot of traffic. And
Right.
for them, it would be an incremental revenue stream. We basically syndicated our model
No,
so
no,
that we were kind of drafting off of publishers that already had traffic, and provided a revenue. We've obviously shared the revenue from the redemption value of the coupon, so to speak, basically when someone signed up and became a lead.
Right.
And I worked on a lot of different things there, launching the publisher network, getting the first set of publishers on board,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
sitting in the middle of the house, figuring out how do you figure out which of these offers should show up on which site, and things of that nature.
Gotcha.
Things went pretty well there, actually. We relisted on NASDAQ, and grew from a 15-cent stock to a $27 stock,
Wow.
and ended up getting acquired in 2007 by our
Oh.
largest customer, which was
Okay.
Apollo Group.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay. So they got acquired, and then you found yourself figuring out, okay, what am I going to do next? Clearly,
Yeah,
you had a little bit
well,
of work with publishers and with advertisers, so you've done that, a lot of that, so you probably had all that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even necessarily thinking what to do next. I mean, it more found me from the point of view that several of my good friends, Aaron Bell, who's now our CEO, and another guy by the name of Jared Koff, who's on our board, who are two good friends of mine socially, were talking to me about certain things in the ad tech space. They weren't actually in ad tech themselves. Two of the smartest people I knew, and two people I loved hanging out with also.
Right.
I was like, you're talking to me about ad tech stuff. This is right in my wheelhouse. Aaron was my neighbor, and a guy that I knew socially and drank beers with.
Right.
And I knew he had this reputation as being this technical prodigy, and he was the youngest engineer to ever ship code at Microsoft. He worked at Microsoft when he was like 14 years old.
Wow.
And had this kind of reputation in the Stanford CS community, but I just knew him as a
drinking
as a buddy,
Right. Right.
and as a drinking buddy. And so when he and Jared, who's this other proven entrepreneur who had helped start Yelp and Slide and a number of and was involved early at PayPal, and when they were asking me about different ad tech stuff, it was like, wow, this timing is actually really good, because I don't want to work for this, necessarily keep working for the company that acquired us.
Right.
And now you're talking about stuff that's right in my wheelhouse, and you're two of my favorite people, and this is perfect. Let's go for it.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it all came
Good
together.
timing.
Yeah. So obviously, this acquisition was the pivotal, like the inciting incident, so to speak.
Yeah, and frankly, if that hadn't happened, and Aaron and Jared had still come to me and started talking about ad tech stuff, I probably it was just more of a kind of time that I had been there for a good number of years, 4 or 5 years, and kind of played a lot of the roles and learned a lot of the things that I was hoping to learn in that experience. And if these guys had come to me, and even if things were still humming along as a standalone company, I probably would have been pretty compelled to jump ship.
All right, cool. So it's the three you guys had your beers. You're like, we should totally do this. And then what? You guys started writing this stuff on the napkin. Did you go up hit up some angels?
So Jared and Aaron had done some thinking about about an early product that is nothing like the product that we have today.
Oh, okay.
The general problem that they kind of brought to the table, though, that I really thought was exciting, that we kind of over the early months and years iterated on, was this problem that in that, if you think back to that time, search was the breakout marketing channel of the internet age, and we'd all just seen the Google IPO perform at an unprecedented way.
Right.
And there were all these tailwinds that were in place for the growth of digital marketing, but display advertising was really a bit of a laggard. Search was head and shoulders the first thing that any marketer would implement, and display was at best an afterthought. It certainly wasn't known for being a performance channel. There was no efficient way to run campaigns. Yep. It wasn't something that your average marketer who would use Google AdWords would take advantage of. Right. Meanwhile, we thought it had a lot of we thought it was poised to be just as powerful as search. It had tremendous scale. Display advertising is and was the primary monetization channel for any content publisher. Right. And unlike search, you had this nice canvas to work with, a 300 by 250 or 728 by 9, or any of these units, right. Which you could display logos and product images and rich media and all these things that could, as a pure marketer, are a lot more interesting than a little blue text link on a search engine results page. So
right.
So, basically that was the problem that we were trying to solve. What's holding this back? Why?
Okay, so let me get this straight. So the problem that you guys were trying to battle is banner blindness. Am I wrong?
No, I wouldn't say that necessarily. That was a later. That was kind of the problem that we were trying to solve was basically how do you popularize display advertising?
Well, hold on a second. Banners have been around for ages. I thought that we're fairly popular amongst most big brand advertisers. Were you trying to bring it to the lower, like the Fortune 5,000?
That was a big part of it. And then, so if you think back to 2006, 2007, display was used for branding only. By a small percent of very large brands on a small percent of very large publishers.
Okay, fair enough.
And,
yeah.
After that, let's call it 10% of spend. The 90% was a very fast drop off to really, scammy, carpet bomb, DR type ads, and we thought there was an opportunity to do a lot more with that. There was lots of things that were going to happen with branding, and that's great. But kind of the notion of building the AdWords for display. Eventually Google added display products to AdWords, but at that time there was no solution like that. So we knew that big brands spend a lot on search, but 2/3 of Google's revenue was coming from small and mid-sized brands. And so that was more the thing that we were trying to solve. How do you bring display advertising to that section of the market? And then we're very enamored of the variety of case studies out there that exist, such as Salesforce, that if you build a scalable platform to address the mid-market that's easy to use and very powerful and kind of democratizes a lot of those features, you could move upstream with enterprise sales and more account management on top of the platform. We got to focus on that technology platform first.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So you're trying to bring this technology that was really exclusive for the big Pepsis of the world that have all this money to burn, and bring it a little bit lower to maybe the middle, medium-sized businesses.
Yeah, that's right. And then it loops back to what you were saying about banner blindness. That and this goes back to what I was kind of saying in the introduction, also that. We raised our Series A in August of 2008, literally a few weeks before Lehman went bankrupt.
The whole crash,
Yeah, and so that was a really scary moment for the company, but it's one of those things that we look back on and say, that was a really good focusing moment. We were able to kind of close the door behind us with our funding and focus on product and engineering and the technology, and not invest in sales and marketing until we knew we had a really strong product. And it also helped to shape our product vision from the point of view of that, during that that terrible economic climate.
Right.
Brand dollars were pretty hard to come by.
Right.
You really
Yeah.
had to show tangible results,
Yeah.
ROI, and clear performance in a way that didn't require a whole lot of.
Right. No, absolutely. Everybody was all about ROI and performance during those years. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it kind of tweaked the problem that we were trying to solve from how do you scale display advertising to how do you make display advertising perform?
Return on investment. Yep.
Yeah,
So let me get this straight here really quick. So you guys were building this dashboard, making it DIY, do it yourself, allowing lots more publishers in this dashboard. And then the next step is because there's no money and everybody's like, I'm going to give you $1. I'm expecting $2 back at least, or whatever, $1.50, and making it performance based. And so that, I assume, started leaning towards the banner blindness. How do we get these things to follow you around? How do we get them to increase the conversion ratio? Is that when?
How do you be more effective on a smaller scale?
Well, how do you make this thing perform at all? How do you get it to parity with the $1 you're going to put in? Are you going to put one more dollar towards search, or is this other thing that we're developing? Can we justify you taking $1 away from search, or at least adding another $1 because it's incremental?
Yeah.
And so, as I was saying, the problem that we were trying to solve really became more about how do you make this channel perform, and.
Really briefly, though, not to cut you off, but why do you suppose Google did not do this from the very beginning? I mean, they had AdWords with search. Why didn't they do, display with this retargeting? And when they bring it out to the, well, what's your thing? Why didn't they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the internal conversations that they were having. They definitely were late to the retargeting game. Which is surprising because it really, the epiphany that we had was that, to generate performance in display, it really actually relies on a lot of the same data, the type of data that makes performance work in search, which is intent.
Yeah.
And people, go to Google and type in exactly what they want to buy, exactly where they want to travel, and that data is what makes search perform so well. It's called intent data.
Right.
And the epiphany that we had was like, well, every website has that intent data sitting latent on their site, and it's generated by the products that people look at, and how many products people look at, and the path through the site.
Yeah,
and
possibly
so,
the site itself, and possibly the articles that they may have read. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The content they consume, what video do they watch, do they go to a pricing page or a product page? And so, Adroll became all about harnessing intent data, which is really all a search engine is about.
Right.
When it comes from monetizing it. So yeah, why did they miss the boat on that? I think, I don't know. I mean, their initial AdWords, the initial display product in AdWords was much more about contextual
They're
targeting.
just killing it in AdSense. They're killing it. And they're like, oh, wow, we're making $90 billion today. Great. Don't worry about this display stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they did realize early, I'd say more so than a lot of people, that display was going to be the next big thing. But they didn't. I don't think there's a number of reasons why a big company like that wouldn't identify retargeting as the killer app of display. And that was certainly the case with them. They were doing this thing with contextual targeting, and for anybody in the media space, that was just the way display was transacted. So they were kind of building a better mousetrap for contextual targeting, and that's how it was more like analogous to magazines, right? You bought an ad, if you were if you had an outdoor product, and you were selling tents, you would buy an ad in Men's Health and Outdoor Magazine and those types of things. So that's what the original AdWords display product was all about.
I think
and they
you're
did build
absolutely right. It just crossed over from
there.
print and TV, and they just kind of crossed it over and didn't really give it deeper thought. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. Plus, it basically translated what they were doing in search. So basically, it turned it was based on a contextual crawl of the page. which basically turned a page of content into a set of keywords. And so it was the easiest way to migrate people who are already buying search keywords over to display.
Yeah.
Just buy ads against pages that contain the same keywords you're already targeting.
Right.
The problem is content that has those keywords, and if someone's reading a page with those keywords in it, doesn't have the same power of intent that someone typing those words into a box necessarily has.
Right.
Particularly when it comes to products and things of that nature.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that was the product they were developing, and they did add remarketing as an add-on,
Right.
but never kind of doubled down. And as is natural when you have a huge set of products like that, it's not uncommon that one doesn't get enough attention.
Yep.
That might end up being the best one.
I have to tell you, this is notable for so many reasons. The first one being, just because you're going up against Google doesn't mean you have to lose. You guys won. That is, Jeff, I have to say, that is huge, right, Jeff? Come on.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, you're going against the 500-pound gorilla.
I'd say the game is still being played. For sure.
Yeah, you're right. That's right. That's true. That's
spiking
true.
of all quite, yeah.
You're right. It's not over yet. You're right. That's a good point. Good point.
No, but I think you guys had a fresh set of eyes and were obviously able to innovate, and take a step in a direction that they weren't able to see at the time.
Yeah, and they had a big install base, so having having a method for migrating that install base into a new channel made a lot of sense. Right. We didn't have an install base. We needed to figure out what was the best entry, the best product to introduce people to display, and we realized that it was based on their first-party customer data, which is now known as retargeting.
So 2008 happens, the Lehman thing, the world's gloom and doom. So what is going on? How big is it? It's just the three of you guys working individually from your own places? You guys have an office, or tell us about.
We were basically using the storage room of another startup at the time, and we were joined very early on by kind of a fourth member of the team, and we've always complemented each other really nicely in terms of our focus area. So Aaron is a technical CEO, and particularly early on, but still today, very focused on product and architecture and building a world-class development team. Jared was very instrumental early on in raising money and some of the early concepting. I came from the ad tech space, so I had some knowledge on what are some table stakes in terms of product requirements, and I had some customers I could bring to the table.
Very cool. So you had a little bit of a Rolodex. That helps. That helps huge.
Yeah, and then Peter, who joined right around the same time I did, kind of came from the business school side of things and was super helpful in saying, okay, that's a great idea, but is there a business model behind this? And what is the right business model? And we had this small amount of funding from Peter Thiel at the time, was our angel investor.
Right.
Are we going to take that money and run right into a brick wall? Right. Or what's the period of time we can test with to see if there's a model here?
So this is actually really important. So did you guys actually do a little bit of testing before you went to Peter? Did you just show mocks, or how did you get that money from Peter?
Invested in that early idea and problem that we were trying to solve around display, and Jared was at PayPal early, and they had that connection.
Okay, so they had that connection. Yeah.
And then the Series A, we had a little bit of traction at that time. Frankly, we still kind of were adapting the model, but we had built some nice product at that time that kind of showed what this could be.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So 2008, was that the first time you guys showed up at like AdTech in New York, or when was your first trade show-ish?
Yeah, I was bouncing around in the marketplace trying to talk to people, talk to customers, work closely with the customers that we had, see what was going on out there. But we took a long time on product development before we made any push. So yeah, we started the company in 2007. Okay. We didn't launch the beta of the product that exists today until 2009.
Okay.
So there was a lot of iterating and testing before we put any kind of oomph behind it.
Wow. Okay, cool. Very cool. Well, I have to tell you, you got some, Peter Thiel, got a lot of smart guys behind the team. There's no way you guys are going to lose, in my opinion. I mean, advertising is the big cash cow on the internet, man.
Are you trying to jinx me here? What's going on?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, I just want you guys to kill Google slightly, just a little bit.
Well,
Really.
they're a big, slow-moving steamroller, and if you don't keep innovating and moving fast ahead of them, then they'll catch up with you eventually, and that's not a good place to be. They're also a good partner of ours right now too. We buy a lot of their inventory,
Is that right?
but we have a little advantage that we can be like Switzerland and partner with Google, partner with Facebook, partner with Yahoo.
Ah, yeah.
Any inventory source we can sit in the middle and help our customers access.
So, all right, so
Yeah.
2009-ish, you guys finally got this thing where you're feeling like, okay, let's present it to the world. What were some of the early things that you guys did to get it out to the larger marketplace?
Well, yeah, we had that advantage in that we had spent a lot of time on product development, so we had a pretty good understanding of and once again, I mentioned kind of Peter's role in terms of understanding some of the business characteristics of how budgets we could forecast how they would grow, what a reasonable churn rate would be, what the an estimate of what the LTV of a customer would look like.
Okay.
So the key thing that we did at the outset was stuff around free trials. We were very confident in the product. We knew how it performed because we had worked closely with this, and to this day, we still offer free trials.
So free trials means that you give ad credits, or how does a free trial work?
Yeah, free media spend.
Okay. Wow, very cool. And so, which sector did you guys really double down on? Was it just the retail? Which ones? Who were your real customers?
Yeah, that was the initial go-to-market, was mid-sized retailers, basically. And obviously we did a lot more fleshing out of, what that persona is, and what those customers needed and what features they needed.
Let's talk about that really briefly. We actually had Arjun, who's the founder of retargeter.com, one of your competitors, and he talked about his early days and again, going after retail. What did you guys do? What was the key? I mean, would you guys hire a bunch of guys on the phone? Like, what did it take to get these guys to try out the free trial? What was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a combination. It's a combination. We definitely have always had an emphasis on. That's another way we beat Google, is being able to have consultative experts to talk to about best practices for retargeting. So certainly, having a sales team has always been a big part, especially when we were. Nobody had educated that mid-market customer on what retargeting was.
Right.
So it was pretty important that they had somebody that they could talk to ask questions. I mean, even understanding, like, how does this work technically? So you mean somebody comes to my site and they're going to see my ad on CNN or one of these major sites? How does that all work?
Right.
And get to demoing and letting them see that, let alone some of the more advanced features like dynamic creative and segmentation and all these other things that we built out later on. Right. So yeah, I mean, a sales team was always a big part of what we were doing, but we've always been big believers in content marketing and providing kind of useful information out to getting useful information out in the world, and that providing a way for people to engage with your brand.
So in 2009-ish, were you guys doing a lot of blogging? Were you doing a lot of guest posting on some of the larger retailer maybe blogs? Or what do you mean content marketing?
Yeah, that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, blogging about best practices. Just at that time, it was more kind of talking about what retargeting is.
Okay.
And and to this day, that's a big part of what I do. And still, when we go to different vertically oriented trade shows, such as for outdoor retailer or Magic, which is a big fashion trade show.
Yeah, fashion. Yep.
I'm doing something for cosmetics or something next month.
Wow.
For some of those vertical, at the industry shows, people know what retargeting is, and you're talking to bigger brands and agencies, and then more about advanced tactics. Right. But at then it's just but for the vertical stuff, where it might be smaller brands in that space, just explaining what this is, what some best practices are, what some pitfalls are, and keeping it pretty simple. So
back in 2009-ish, how big was the team? I mean, do you remember? And how big of those people were in direct sales, were calling, dialing for dollars? Like, what was the split?
Well, we had a very small sales team for a long time. We had about 3 people who were our kind of first sales class, who kind of stuck with us through a lot of the iterations and let's talk to some customers, but work very closely with them.
Okay.
And not everything we did worked by any stretch, and there was a lot of churn in there. But the guys that stuck with it from that group are still with us today.
That's awesome.
man, like
Oh, nice.
Wow. So
4 or 5
what?
years later, not a lot of people leave Adroll, which is awesome. I mean, it makes such a difference, and to see people kind of grow in their careers and have paths and kind of start as individual salespeople and become leaders and all that.
What are some of the what's a good little secret you'd love to tell us about how to get in the door with some of these when you are doing the outbound calling or outbound emailing? What did you guys learn?
Well, it's evolved over time as our product and the market has evolved over time. I mean, I've always been a firm believer in less higher quality outreach and customizing what you're saying because you're talking to a specific person who has a specific set of needs, and customizing what you're saying and suggesting for that person, and take a little more time, but be a little bit more thoughtful in the outreach. And there are ways that you can automate that stuff or scale that over time, such as a verticalized sales team, which is something that we moved to eventually. Now our sales team is, around, looking out onto some of it, around 80 some people now.
Wow, 80 people.
Yeah, so the whole company is about 185 or so right now.
Okay.
And now have offices in San Francisco and New York, and we're opening in the process of opening Dublin right now.
I want to still go back in your history a little bit, but just tell me really briefly, what does it feel like to be growing at whatever it is, 10,000% or whatever it is?
For me personally?
Yeah, for you. Yeah.
I mean, there are definitely moments of, there are definitely surreal moments. Once again, starting in the back supply room of another company, and then now I can kind of turn around. Should I turn you around and see the?
Let's check it out. Yeah.
Sure, I would love to.
We have that. So now we have this awesome, multi-story mezzanine level, several beautiful floors in San Francisco here. I definitely kind of put my head up and look at it, and I'm amazed, and walk by conference rooms where there are folks who unfortunately I don't necessarily even know that well because they just started, but they're all engaged and working on something, and it's like, wow, who are those people? What are they doing?
Right.
And you see the stuff they're whiteboarding. It's like, oh, okay, I get the problem they're working on.
Right.
And so that stuff is pretty surreal, but because Adroll is not by any stretch an overnight success. It's been a very gradual build. So during that time, you lose a little bit of the dopamine response to the good things, and try not to let the setbacks bother you. And for better or for worse, you're kind of trying to keep that even keel. So I think that still happens, but there's still surreal moments that happen. Whether it be remembering still kind of being in the mentality from that kind of recession era, and being the early days of being at trade shows and nobody knowing who you are, and just kind of scrap to
right.
Now people coming up to me at shows and be like, oh, I read that thing that you did here, or kind of like waiting to chat,
right.
And from big brands, it's like, oh my god, like really? So that's those moments happen.
Let's talk really. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, let me ask a question. So you had a pretty good from the outset. You guys kind of knew what problem you were attacking and the customer's problems. How much of a struggle did you guys get from the start to now, as far as like being unsure of what you were doing? Were you ever uncertain, or were you always pretty confident in the way you guys were approaching the advertising?
I mean, historically, that's one of the nice things about being in the digital advertising space, and sort of what I mentioned, that at that time in particular, there was just so many tailwinds that were working in your favor. I mean, the other thing that I totally left out was that in 2007, that's when the display landscape shifted in a big way from being centered around ad networks, where you had to aggregate a whole bunch of publishers and get a whole bunch of advertisers and kind of bring them together, right. To a world more driven by real-time bidding and exchanges. So these large pools of inventory that we could tap into and that hold kind of one side of the equation constant. So there's a number of these changes that luck or timing or whatever kind of happened that allowed us to do what we do today in a way that was able to scale. And yeah, the opening of the exchanges and RTV, real-time bidding, was a big part of that. So we didn't have to go run around and acquire tens of thousands of publishers. We could do 3, 4, 5 integrations with the largest inventory sources, and then only focus our product on one set of customers, which is the advertisers and what works for them. And then we could be inventory agnostic and cherry pick the best performing inventory for whatever advertiser it made sense.
Oh, very cool. So it sounds like the stars were aligning for you guys back then, man.
Yeah, and that's just a few. I mentioned kind of how the economic crisis ended up working in our favor. I mean, there was a number of trends. The whole so there was the whole trend of the democratization of e-commerce that started happening, and the barrier to launching a retail store came down. Okay. So just like they were blogging CMSs like WordPress and so forth, there was sort of the emergence of platforms that made it easier to launch an online-only retail brand. And then you kind of saw the rise of this whole new wave of e-commerce with social commerce and the guild groups of the world. And so this whole space that we were playing in on the customer side was sort of blowing up also, which was perfect for kind of our play, which was to democratize these performance display tools, and at the same time, the customer base was growing really rapidly.
So let's go into retargeting just really briefly. So before retargeting, I don't know what the average CTRs were on banners. It was probably like 0.001%, some really small number. Where are they at now? What are the average CTRs now for a decently well optimized retargeting campaign these days?
Yeah, I mean it depends a lot by vertical. Depends a lot by your creative. It depends a lot by inventory source. So the big game changer in our space lately has been the emergence of Facebook Exchange. Okay. So the ability to bid on Facebook inventory based on what we know about a particular user, the fact they might have looked at something on one of our customer sites or put something in their cart and abandoned it or things of that nature. Right. So CTRs are one thing we care more about return on investment. Okay. Some verticals, for example, B2B, a SaaS software company. Okay. They're not going to get very good CTRs, but every sale is worth $10,000 versus a shirt retailer who every sale is worth $50, and they need a much higher CTR, and the barrier to a purchase is much lower. And so we look at CTR is a small part of a bigger ROI equation.
Okay, that makes absolute sense.
What is the number, the ROI for a retargeting campaign? I mean, because click-through rate would be just for one of the banners, right? But the user's going to see 5 banners potentially. So
right, and that's part of it also, and that also varies by vertical. But it all backs out to that. With retargeting in particular, one of the things you need to be aware of is that if you did no retargeting, some people would leave your site and come back on their own and convert. So we're not even necessarily concerned with cost per conversion. We're concerned about how much incremental lift did we actually generate for the business.
Oh, interesting.
And so once you're generating any incremental business, then you kind of just measure it up against the media spend and stack it with the other channels, and that's how you measure it.
Okay, so let's briefly go into retargeting for internet startups and pure internet play startup. Let's talk about marketplaces. There are lots of marketplaces being launched. Let's say I launch a marketplaces for I don't know to meditate. Let's say, and this site gathers all these meditation experts, and you can go online and learn to meditate. Is basically for the most part, I think most people relied on AdWords with search intent and all that. Do you think retargeting could really work for something like an internet marketplace, that startup, let's say?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, once again, that intent data, that first-party intent data, the data that's being generated by people coming to your site and raising their hand and saying, I'm interested in X, Y, and Z, is the most valuable data that you have.
And is it better than search? I mean, is the ROI better than search, in your opinion? Try to be as unbiased as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, Adroll is we do our own marketing for our own product, and retargeting is our best performing marketing channel. Okay. The knock against retargeting as it compares to search is the scale, right? Because you're limited to the number of people that you have already visiting your site.
Yeah.
So, versus, depending on what keyword you're trying to search on, there could be lots of that on Google.
Right.
Those could also be very competitive keywords, and you might not be able to afford them.
That's right. Yeah.
Is it better than search? It's better in some ways. It's better in that you own the data. You don't need to go to Google to buy their data. Depending on what the keyword is, does it have as much scale? Maybe, maybe not. It depends how competitive the keywords are in your segment.
Okay.
So, search has a hard time scaling also in certain ways. There's only so many searches available in the keywords that perform for you, and you might get priced out of those keywords.
I have to tell you,
it's complementary. It's not an either or type.
I totally hear you. There's a lot of factors to consider. I'm on beta list all the time. I'm always reading TechCrunch, and I'm always looking at these new startups that are launching. A lot of these startups are, 1-2 man teams, maybe 3 people, maybe working on the side while they have their day jobs. Maybe this guy's launching an iPhone app or an Android app, and these guys are all struggling to try to get noticed, And so, in your opinion, what's a small amount that you can get in and test retargeting banners and display? In your opinion?
Yeah, the budget that you'll spend is totally proportionate to the amount of your traffic. We have some general budget estimates that are pretty back of the envelope, but we generally say to allocate a couple pennies per unique user per month.
Okay.
Is a good starter budget, and then as you kind of get a larger and larger audience, you're going to want to segment it in certain ways. People who went to a certain area of the site or purchased or didn't purchase, and negatively target people for a certain period of time and so forth. But for a small business, the advantage is that a lot of that stuff can be set it and forget it until you get to a certain size, and then you don't necessarily, it's best practice to do, creative testing and A/B testing and so forth. But because of the nature of retargeting, where people are kind of expiring off of your cookie lists, because you set a duration for which they're in market for. So you maybe only want to retarget them for 10, 20, whatever it might be days. And then, then they're gone. Or then they're in another bucket where you might want to re-engage them later down the line. But, you can kind of set this trickle up, so to speak, and then not mess around with it too much, and it's just going to make sure that anything you do to drive traffic to the site is getting more conversions because you're following up with them if they don't convert the first time. So
in your opinion, or actually just recently, do you have any startups that you've worked with, smaller outfits that have done fairly well? Can you think of any examples?
Yeah, we added 1,200 customers in May. Alone. So and those are I always love the stat. There are people spending anywhere from $100 a month to $100,000 a month on the platform.
Let's talk specifically about bootstrapped guys that are just trying to make this thing happen.
A lot of people start with the free trial, and then because it generates ROI, you're getting return on that dollar. So it's a positive, it's an investment positive thing. We have great relationships with Y Combinator. We offer a special deal for Y Combinator companies. We build a free set of ads for them to help with the process of getting started. We want to be supportive of those communities, and we know some percent of them are going to be the next big thing. So
that's right.
We want to help them early on.
Now, come on, you got to have an example. Throw me something, a bone.
Like a specific
specific company ROI that they've seen. Any vertical, dating, or health, or
the bread and butter vertical is, and I mentioned it, but the most obvious use case is apparel. So I have a friend who has started a yoga line, a line of yoga clothing in LA, and kind of building that following, and that market is required. People shop around, right? Especially as a new brand, they're gonna hear about it, but then maybe go away, and then staying in front of them is pretty imperative as they're kind of shopping around in that consideration phase. So that apparel vertical is one where we see a lot of success.
Obviously, apparel is really good. What about maybe subscription, like coffee in the mail once a month, or man packs and that kind of thing?
Anybody driving to any online conversion is an obvious use case. And then I mentioned even one of our fastest growing verticals are B2B products. Even though those don't have that quick online conversion, it's the same process of nurturing a lead through the consideration process. And okay, well, they're going to visit our homepage and they're going to visit our pricing page that shows the different packages and so forth. But we know that if we can get them to watch a video, they're X times more likely to convert. So they're going to look at the pricing page and leave. And then you want to remind them of the benefits of the silver package, and here's a video about it. So a link to a video or a webinar or a white paper download. That's been a big use case of the new newsfeed placement that we have access to through Facebook, is to promote content. So you want to promote a webinar to people who've been to your site, retarget that in the newsfeed, drive webinars.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk about this. You said Facebook has opened it up a little bit. Now tell us, what are you getting from Facebook? What kind of information are you able to glean? Is this better than any other source out there in terms of like psychographics and demographics and all that?
Well, no, because we don't use it in that way at all. We basically, the advantage that Facebook has is that it's the largest publisher on the web. Something like 28% of the ad impressions occur on Facebook. And historically, that had been a real big blind spot for our retargeting campaigns. And so now we're not using any of Facebook's data. You can still do that through Facebook's set of ad products. Facebook Exchange, which is the new product, new about almost exactly a year ago, we were kind of part of a secret alpha that gave a few companies like ours the ability to bid on specific users that were showing up on Facebook and delivering one of Facebook's native ads to those users, or right-hand side, whether that's native is debatable. But so basically that was the big game changer there. There's this huge inventory source. The inventory is very efficiently priced. It's very high quality in the sense that it's always above the fold. You have users' identity being verified, and that there's a login. So that screens out a lot of undesirable or non-human traffic. Let's say you can address that in display also, but Facebook's particularly fail-safe with it.
That's good.
And yeah, it's been just an awesome channel for our customers. Even just the small right-hand side ad units where we could do dynamic products there, and then now having access to kind of the front and center newsfeed placement, which is great for promoting deals and products, but also content, as I mentioned.
So what, in terms of display on the open web and of course in Facebook, what in terms of display, what have you noticed really gets people's attention, gets them to click through? What any you want to share any tips there?
Yeah, I mean, well, for retailers, and it depends the channel and so forth. But for retailers, we have a product called Liquid Ads that that pulls product imagery from an advertiser's site and displays relevant products and recommended products based on what that user was shopping for. And especially for smaller businesses, if you've probably already invested in having great product imagery and great product photography, so you might as well reuse that in your creative. And Liquid Ads provides an easy way for customers to do that. And so that's been a great product. And for Facebook on the right-hand side, that's also been really good because Facebook has a lot of impressions, so creative fatigue can be a big problem. So you can't show the same thing over and over again. So by making that dynamic and pulling in product images, that's kind of not only are the ads more relevant because they're showing products that are based on what the user looked at, but it's kind of a programmatic way to keep the creative fresh.
Wow, that sounds very cool. In terms of going back to investing and getting the investor interested in your startup, I know obviously your co-founder had a good relationship with Peter Thiel. What could startups do now, in your opinion, if you were to start again and to do this all over again? What would you do to get that first round? What metric is like the key metric in your opinion is what investors really respond to?
Yeah, I mean, even since we raised our first round, the world of early stage investing has changed quite a bit over the last 4 or 5 years, and has the cost of launching a company has really come down, and the world of angel lending has proliferated. I'd say with not just Y Combinator, but 500 startups and a slew of these other groups that that do a large number of very small bets to get some MVP out into the market and get some
Right.
See if you can get some traction. So I don't have a lot of experience with that, with going through that early stage round because I haven't done it in 5 years.
Right.
But the stuff that we're talking about now are more financial metrics driven, and I don't think that's the conversation that a lot of people need to worry about in those early stages today. Obviously having some concept of what a business model could look like is always important. But getting traction, getting critical mass, getting customers is probably more so, and that also relies on once again, that's where having that financial crisis was pretty lucky for us because there was no pressure from our investors to spend the money too fast.
Right.
Or get to that answer too fast. Because we didn't know where that next dollar was coming, so we had the luxury of kind of hunkering down and focusing on product for a couple of years before we needed to really spend money to bring it to market.
Right. So, you're in the thick of things over there in San Fran. What's the atmosphere there these days? I mean, is everybody and their mother have a startup and they're all looking for funding? Have you noticed any trends? Is everybody just doing mobile now?
Well, answer the first question. There's always been a very vibrant startup culture here in the Bay Area, and that's certainly evident. But there's also an increasing number of let's call it newer technology companies that I think people who might have done a startup also view as being a really fun challenge and an environment to come into. A company that has gotten through some of the early hurdles, but still has a lot of runway and has a lot of opportunity to innovate and do things in the future. Seeing a lot of talent go to those places as well. As I mentioned, we're 185 people right here in downtown San Francisco. Right across the street is Square. Right down the street that way is Twitter. And there's obviously always Google and Facebook and a bunch of other folks around that are attracting have some pretty attractive characteristics to work at as well. So it's always a competitive market for top talent.
I bet. If you were to leave, I know you're enjoying yourself over there at Adroll, but if you were to leave, what would you start right now, man?
That's a good question.
Come on, I know there's got to be some cool things that you've probably seen. You're like,
Yeah, so my background is very much in the B2B and ad tech space.
Ad tech space, yeah.
I would say that I think that, and going back to your last question, does everybody and their mother kind of have a startup? And I certainly that's kind of is one of those other surreal things that people kind of seek me out to talk about entrepreneurship and those kinds of things. Where I still view myself as learning a lot and trying to make it happen here. But I'd say that one thing that when people conceive of startup ideas, it almost always is consumer oriented. And I listen to those ideas, and it's very hard to sometimes envision the business model and to see how those scale. You need to really get to massive audience scale for a lot of those business models to kick in. And so I think for whatever reason, there's a little bit of there's a bias against B2B companies from a startup perspective, even though that's probably an easier path to success for any number of reasons. And I think the folks are best positioned, and myself included, to solve problems that you've seen your company have. And instead of rushing to figure out, I had this great idea, like wouldn't it be great if I could send a photo to the restaurant of food I want to have make it or whatever. Right. There are some B2B problems that I guess don't have don't have the allure or aren't as sexy, but probably much
than the
stronger
consumer
business
stuff.
models.
Yeah,
there's all sorts of stuff like that we see all the time here.
All right. So as we know, going back to advertising, as we know, mobile ads are exploding, supposedly going to double this year. Where does Adroll stand? What's your feeling on that? Is there a lot? I know there's a lot of fragmentation there. It's kind of the Wild West of advertising. Give us your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, well, we're approaching mobile the way we approach a lot of things. In that, we want to evaluate the opportunity and invest in it when we think it will solve a problem for our customers.
Okay.
And a lot of the options that are available in mobile targeting today don't do that for customers that really want performance. And that's really what that we've been shaped to think about. So, today mobile certainly plays a role in that it's sort of there's certainly exceptions to this, but for a large part, it sort of is a checkbox on an RFP for an agency.
Gotcha.
Where a brand is talking to their agency. It's like, I'm reading all this stuff about how mobile and our audience is on mobile. We need to be on mobile. We need to be on mobile.
Right.
And people ask, what's your mobile solution? What do you do on mobile? What do you do on mobile?
Right.
And they don't really know what they want. There is no killer app on mobile that really delivers the type of performance that we need to demonstrate to our customers for them to feel comfortable about reinvesting. So we don't want to just kind of tell a story like, well, now you're on mobile, so that's cool.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second, Adam. So this could be an opportunity in disguise. If somebody can really make the ROI work on mobile and make it less Wild West, this could be a good time to really double down on this area, in my opinion.
No doubt, and there are a lot of people working on it, ourselves included. But we haven't set on that killer app and killer use case for mobile, and there's more problems than just for doing what we do, which is looking at the problem as helping brands collect, analyze, and act on their customer data because of there's just technological limitations to being able to do that on mobile. The cookie and the cookie environment.
I got you.
Apple changing what they're doing with IFA, identifier for advertisers, and how you can use that and how you can't use that. So instead of investing in a lot of work that we'd probably be tearing out already at this point, kind of letting that space evolve a little bit and learn along with it.
Yeah, you're building on their platform. You never know what's going to happen. We've talked to several app developers, and it's so hard to get any traction in the App Store, and Android, I assume, is as hard. What would you say to a budding app developer, a game developer, or even a productivity app? Is display something to consider? Is Adroll a possibility?
Frankly, I don't know. I don't think so. Once again, I haven't seen anything in mobile. I mean, let me backtrack a little bit. The one bright spot in mobile, the one thing that mobile is being used for a performance perspective that does seem to work is some of the drive to install type stuff. So I've gotten good reports back from folks using the Facebook suggested app product in the mobile newsfeed, hearing good results about that. It's not something that we're doing ourselves yet because it's not available.
Right.
But that might be a place to look. That's the only area that I've heard drive.
Paper install. That seems to be working.
Click install, and if you know what you're doing and you know how to optimize a campaign and you know the various targeting options and you maybe know how to get an account manager on the phone at one of the ad networks, then you might be able to make something happen. Google acquisition.
Very cool. Jeff?
I want to ask about other verticals. So obviously it's great for people who have stuff to convert, stuff to sell. What are some of the fringes maybe of stuff like for our audience who is maybe just trying to, downloads is a good one for apps, but maybe just someone who's trying to collect email addresses or just get people to register for a site where, maybe they don't have a super high user value, but, it's not like a shopping cart type.
It's the exact same notion. As I mentioned, B2B is one of our fastest growing segments because, you're still kind of bringing that lead through the funnel. So, first someone's consuming the content, and then you're going to want to ask them to do whatever the next step is. Whether that's retail or B2B, kind of the same principle applies. So, lead generation is a big area that people use retargeting today.
Gotcha. So before, and we've had a great chat. I don't want to keep you forever. Before we leave, as an entrepreneur, what piece of advice would you give to startup guys toiling away, working on their product?
Looking at our track record, don't rush to market. And especially in those early days, I think a lot of entrepreneurs go in thinking that they have the answer, and it's not necessarily some magical pivot you need to set yourself up for. But refinements and going to market soft with customers, listening to them very closely, and really being adaptable in those early days before trying to take the world over. It needs to be done. It needs to be done one step at a time, and very few startups are overnight successes. So take the long view and get ready to hunker down for 6 years.
Wow.
Great story. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's good. That's a good dose of reality. I appreciate that. Well, so what's next for you, man? What do you plan on doing the next year or so?
A lot of international. We've noticed the problem that we were solving in the U.S. Still exists other places in the world, and because we have both self-service and account-managed options,
right.
We're able to see certain countries kind of light up red with inbound traffic and people signing up, and instead of kind of taking those opportunities opportunistically and just hoping they come and sign up, we're going to be a little bit more proactive in entering those markets and making sure we do all the right things. It's no small task to internationalize, be able to work in different currencies.
That's got to be a huge. Which country is a notable one out of the? Which one's really kicking up right now?
Yeah, well, we're going to do the predictable. We're going to do one predictable one and one more high beta one. The predictable one is Europe. We're opening Dublin office, as I mentioned, to kind of head up Europe activities, and the higher beta one is Brazil.
Brazil.
So we're seeing that economy really explode.
Really? Tell us about that. Is it a hotbed for startups and technology right now?
Yeah, so Sao Paulo, there's a lot of that going on there, and a lot of the kind of mid-sized, an emerging kind of mid-market, which is the set of customers that we spend a lot of time on.
Right.
They have enterprise customers, which will be great, and we need to be down there to be able to work with them.
Right.
And then a large mid-market, so we can kind of run the same. And our offering there, but putting it in the Brazil market and doing all the right PR and marketing and making sure people are aware of us.
Right.
Looking forward to seeing how that goes.
Yeah, wow, you got a lot of growth ahead of you still. Even though you guys are killing it, there's still some more to be left. It's really great.
The whole world out there.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. All right, so thanks again for coming on, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Sure thing, my pleasure.
If hopefully we can keep in touch in a few months, we can come back on and share your story, see how things are going.
Sure thing, give me a shout.
And definitely recommend our show to your friends and colleagues. We're still trying to grow our user base. We might even try doing retargeting for ourselves.
I could probably set you up with something.
All right. Yeah,
cool.
You might need to do that.
Yeah, we'll give the free trial a shot.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little more than that. We'll see.
All right, cool. All right, well, I'll definitely be emailing you offline. So thanks again, Adam. I really appreciate it.
All right, my pleasure. See you guys.
Take care.
Thanks so much. See you online.
Bye.